Hey everyone, welcome back. And today the name of the game is Resin Casting into a Silicone Mold. It's pretty easy, but it can be intimidating at first. And so I'm going to go through what I hope are all the issues you might encounter when starting out. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. The first thing you want to know is that over time, urethane is going to ruin a silicone mold. Can't avoid it, but you can put it off, and there's a few things you can do to manage it. But as you're going into it, just keep in mind that once you start doing a lot of casting with resins, your mold is going to become disposable. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Kind of like if you ever do any woodworking, saw blades, eventually they just get dull and you have to get them sharpened or get them replaced or something like that. Same kind of concept. Just keep it in mind that, over time they're going to go bad. First thing you can do is use a fast acting resin. I use Smooth Cast 300 and it has a 10-minute demold time and it has a 3-minute working time. And so that means once you mix it, the clock is ticking and you have three minutes to get that resin where you want it. So a resin with a short demold time is going to give you a lot more use than something with a long demold time. So for example, if I have something with an hour, I have to leave it in there before I can pull it out. That's going to cut my usage of that mold down by a factor of 6 because it's not really the speed of the reaction that harms the mold, it's how long that resin is reacting while in contact with the mold. Use a mold release of some kind. They normally come in two formulas, wax-based and silicone-based. The wax-based formulas do a really good job of releasing the part from the mold, but we're using silicone, so that's not really a big deal anyways. The other thing it does is it prevents the resin from actually contacting the mold, therefore um, not allowing it to break down like it normally would. So that's great in theory, but the wax at the same time gets on your piece and then also really does a good job of preventing the paint from sticking. And so you might want to think that through a little bit. If it's something that's not going to be painted, no big deal. Otherwise, you'll need something that'll really reliably take the wax off. Otherwise, it's going to be a really hard time getting that piece to have any paint on it. The other mold release is a silicone based, and that I don't necessarily use it for a release on silicone itself. It's more of something to replenish the mold as time goes on. So maybe after 5 or 6 casts, I will give it a light spray and then leave it sit for a little while, and then that will sort of replenish the silicone a little bit. You want to be careful though. Really light dustings is all you want, otherwise it'll start to eat into the detail and then that's a bad thing. When you are mixing, make sure you read the directions and know the mixing ratio that you need to get a proper mix of this stuff. Since I use Smoothcast 300, that is 10 parts part A to 9 parts part B, and I use that using grams as a measurement. And so it's really easy. If I have 100 grams of A, boom, 90 grams of B. Also, the stuff dries pure white. And so I like to mix a colorant that is urethane compatible, otherwise you're going to have problems, into part B, and I just dump some right into the jug because this is all I use it for. So gray for everything is just fine. But just remember, you're committed to that color once you do that. There's no taking it back out. So either mix in small batches, as you want to, or if you know all you need is gray, just dump it right in there. If you don't have a pressure pot, you are going to get bubbles. Absolutely. Can't avoid it. It's just something that's created due to the reaction. Can't get rid of them. They're going to be there. But what you can do is control where they land. And so what we need for that is a surfactant, and the baby powder is a great surfactant for urethane resins. And so the piece will be nice and smooth and bubble free on the outside, and all of the bubbles will land on the inside where they can't be seen and where they don't matter. To do this, just take your mold in a plastic bag, give it the shake and bake treatment, knock off the extra, and there you go. You don't want any clumps because that will cause a cavity to form inside the piece, so you have a chunk missing. But just a real light dusting is all you need. Bang it out on the side of a garbage can, and then you'll be just fine. Resin casting can get messy, so what you want is a layer of something it won't stick to. I use foil backed parchment paper, and I use that for a lot of stuff, so that should be no surprise to anyone who's watched some of my previous videos. But once the waste is wiped onto it and it cures, then it'll pick off very easy, and you can reuse that piece of paper, almost as long as you want. If you're working with small parts, it doesn't matter how much baby powder you use, you can still get bubbles just from pouring. And that's because there might be an air bubble that just gets trapped, but it's not too hard to fix. You just take a crafting stick or a tongue depressor or something like that, work it in there a little bit, and those should come to the surface, and then you'll be fine. The other thing would be a steep undercut, and where the resin just cannot get from pouring, in which case you may have to stir it around a little bit in order to get the good piece. Once you break everything out of the mold, it should be just fine. Just a little bit of flashing to take care of, not a big deal. After that, dump them in a bin, sort them however you want, and you're good to go for whenever you get around to actually building that project. That's all there is to it. Hopefully that answers all the questions you might have about resin. If you have any more, feel free to leave them below. Next time, we're going to do something similar with Woodland Scenics rubber molds, those black ones. And those you really do need a mold release. Otherwise, the resin will never come out. It'll just bond right to it, and that is a super big pain in the butt. And we're going to go over a couple things to get around that, and then backfilling with expanding foam. So, we'll see you then, and thanks for watching.